Hello everybody and welcome to a new tutorial. In today's tutorial we're going to be covering this cool matrix style bullet time effect in UE5 Niagara. Now we're not doing anything overly complicated, so this should work for you in UE4.25, 0.26 and 0.27, but obviously the later your engine version the more likely you're going to be able to get the same results. So just bear that in mind. For this effect, we are going to need 3 meshes and 3 textures. You can see them on screen now. You can find these in the description. You'll be able to get a link to a Google Drive folder that has all of these in. Please download those files, and then we can get started. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make this nice bullet time ripple or bullet wake, the nice blobby boy that's moving away from the bullet here. So to do this, first we're going to right click, we're going to head to material, M_bullet wake, and we'll double click to open this up and drag him from the second screen. There we are. And we're just going to take the T_water normal and drag that into material, open this guy up, deselect the texture sample. Now we're going to change our blend mode to additive, and we're going to change our shading model to unlit because we don't want these to be affected by any shadows. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our normal map here and we're actually going to make this a radial texture, and we're going to do that by grabbing ourselves a vector to radial value. And what this is going to allow us to do is to just take in any vector, in this case just the default UVs, and then we are going to make those radial. If you plug anything into the start of this node here, it will break because there is a little bit of math inside of this that is moving this distortion to the center, otherwise you'd get it in the top left corner. So just bear that in mind. From the radial coordinates, we're just going to drag this out and we're going to run this through a panner, and what the panner is going to allow us to do is it's going to let us actually move the texture. We'll plug this directly into the UVs of our lovely normal map, and what we'll do next is right click and just start previewing the node. So you can see now we've got this nice radial normal map. So we're getting this nice rippling effect instead of just the random waves. If we select our panner and we go to the speed Y, anything that we put in the Y is going to radiate either inwards or outwards. We want outwards, so we're going to go -0.5 for quite a quick outwards ripple. And if we wanted this to spin slightly, we can put some value in the X. So I'm going to put 0.1 in the X to make it also spin in an anti-clockwise direction while it's radiating outwards. This is just going to give them a bit more of a unique look while the particles are spawning. Okay, we'll stop previewing this node. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to set this up ready for use with particles. So we'll right click, particle color, and the particle color, we're just going to plug this directly into emissive color. Ta-da, finished. Right. It's not quite finished. We need to do quite a bit more with this. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we can control a normal. Now, I see what you're saying. You say, indeed, the normal is not currently available. To get this available, we just have to plug some value into our refraction. Now then, for our refraction, we're going to want to be able to control this inside of our particle system. So we're going to hold L and left click first for a lerp, and the reason we want a lerp is because we want to be able to take the refraction from a refracted value to a non-refracted value, or a non-refracted value to a refracted value, so we can make them fade in or out. And the reason that we want to be able to do this, if we just unplug our emissive color really quick and plug any old value, so if we say 0 into the refraction, over in the little details window here, or not the details window, the little viewport, you can see now that the refraction is visible despite the fact that we have no opacity plugged in. So our opacity is 0. We're drawing nothing, but we're still refracting. That's because the refraction is still going to occur either way. So we need to be able to control our refraction without using or relying on the alpha of the particle color. So we'll just plug the particle color back in real quick. We'll get rid of this. So to do this, what we need is we need to plug a lerp into refraction. And what we want to be able to do next is control this inside of the particle system. And to do that, we need to use a dynamic parameter. So a dynamic parameter will let us get any of these values inside of our particle system and change them. So we're going to take param1 and put that into the alpha, and this is now going to control how much refraction we have. So we'll change param1 to refraction. And what this means is at a value of 1, we will get the B value from the lerp, and at a value of 0, we will get the A value of the lerp. And for everything between 0 and 1, we will get a blended value between the A and the B. So at 0, we want no refraction, so hold 1 and left click for a constant, and we're going to set this to 1, because a refraction index of 1 is no refraction at all. And in the second value, hold 1 and left click, we will put 1.15 for a bit of refraction. Ta-da! And now that refraction is set up, and you can see now that we have our refraction and normal pin is now available to us. We can actually plug a normal map into this. So we want to be able to do similar with our normal map. We don't want the normals to always be visible. We want to be able to change those based on our refractive values also. To do that, we want to be able to control our normal strength. So if we've got no refraction, we don't want any normals in there really. So with RGB selected, we'll drag out and we will component mask out just the R and the G. And the reason we're taking the R and the G is because in a normal map, the red and the green values determine any sorts of changes of angle on the surface of an object. The blue is just a default base value. The R and the G is the X and the Y changes in angular direction on a surface. So we just want to be able to control those. The blue doesn't matter. We just need the blue to remain at 1. So we will hold M and left click for a multiply, and this will allow us to control these values. So anything above this will make it more intense. Anything below 1 will make it less intense. And we're going to use another dynamic parameter value, which will be param2, and that will allow us to control this directly inside of our particle system. So now we're going to give this our name, normal strength. Cool. Not quite finished yet though, because right now this is just a 2 vector. If we were to plug this into the normal map, it would probably tell us that we're not going to get the right results. It's sort of doing, but we don't really want to mess with only 2 results. So what we're going to do here is we're going to append our value back in. So to do this, we want to take our multiply here, drag from it, append vector, and we want to take the B and plug this into the B of the append. So what an append does is it takes values and then adds them to essentially a list. It builds a list. So here we have the R and the G values. So imagine that's 1 and 5. The append is taking that into the A, so it's going 1, 5, and then it's taking in whatever we plug into the append. Say the blue is 3, so it says 1, 5, 3 in the append. So then we get that value out, and we can append that again, and we can make it longer, but we don't need to. Next, what we're going to do is we want to be able to make sure that the normals are only visible from a certain angle. We don't want to always see a wobble. We want it to just be from a certain angle. And to do this, we're going to use our trusty friend, the Fresnel. And what we'll do is hold L and left click for a lerp. The Fresnel is going to go into the alpha, and then we're going to plug our lovely append into the A. And the B, we actually just want the B to be a flat normal value. So we're going to hold 3 and left click. And to get a flat normal value, we want 0.5 in the red and the green, and 1 in the blue. And if we were to plug that into the B, that is just a flat normal. So the B is now essentially nothing. And we can plug this into the normal, but when we do, it's going to break. Boop. And the reason it breaks is because the Fresnel is using a pixel normal world space, and we can't use pixel normal world space for the normal. To fix this, we just need to override the normal, and we just need this to say, you know, the Fresnel's base. So we take a base and plug that in, and it fixes. Okay, so we'll apply this. There's just one more thing that we need to do, and that is to allow us to control the opacity. Now here you say, dude, the opacity didn't matter earlier. Why does it matter now? The reason it matters now is because the opacity is still going to allow us to control where we're drawing color. Okay, so for the opacity, we're going to do a nice little trick with a dot product. So we're going to right click and we're going to get the pixel normal world space, and we'll right click again and we're going to get the camera vector world space. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the dot product of these 2 things. Now, I'm not fully up to date on all the maths, but what I believe the dot product does is it takes the 2 vectors, compares their lengths and their directions, multiplies those together, and then you get the cosine of the angle between them, and that will give you your result. That's what we're going to use for an alpha to determine where to draw color. So this is basically determining where that green tint is going to be on the lens. So hold L and left click for a lerp. We'll plug this into the alpha, and what this is going to mean is as we move our camera around, it's going to compare each pixel in normal world space, and it's going to give a different value based on where the camera and where the pixel is. So we're going to get some cool effect. What we need to plug in here is going to be our opacity and then no opacity. So hold 1 and left click for a constant. We'll plug just 0 into the B. Hold 1 and left click for another constant, which is going to be our opacity value. And we're going to set this to 0.06, so something very, very low. We only want a little bit of green in there. We'll plug that into the A. And the final thing we need to do is just need to make sure that we can fade this out. So hold M and left click, take the alpha from the particle color, plug that into the, we'll put it in the B, and the lerp into the A, and then plug this into the opacity. Cool, and now you can see, as we move our camera around here, you can see the white. If we change our thing to a little circle here, you can see that the white parts of the mesh change based on where our camera currently is. Pretty cool. It's not quite a Fresnel. Don't just change this out for Fresnel. Fresnel will give you a slightly different result because we're not using a sphere. We'll apply and we'll save, and that is our cool lens material done. So the next thing that we're going to do is start setting up our actual particles. So right click, we're going to go to Effects, Niagara System. Next, we'll choose a directional burst. We'll press plus, finish, ns_bullet wakes. I'm just going to drop this into the world. It's going to spurt some, and we're just going to grab the bullet wake, copy the location, and then I just want to grab the bullet wakes here and paste that in and get rid of the old version. Cool. So now we have nothing there. We'll open up the lovely little particle system here. And the first thing that we want to do is we don't want a sprite renderer, so it can be deleted. Under renderer, press add, and we're going to add a mesh renderer because we know that this is going to be a mesh. We're going to select it. We're going to tick the override materials, and we're going to add in the meshes and the materials one object into each array. So when you press add, it's going to move your materials down quite far, so press add on both. So now we can get a material and a mesh. We're going to add static mesh underscore lens, which is going to be the actual lenses. Woo, look at them all flying around. And in the material, let's just make sure that I do grab the right one for you guys, because I have multiple versions of this material. Plug this in to the material like so, and now we'll get them spurting all over the place. Cool, so you can now see we're getting these lenses flying all over. Now, obviously, we don't want this behavior, so we're going to get rid of gravity force, we're going to get rid of drag, we're going to get rid of scale color, which we will need later, but we're going to get rid of it just so we can get a clean version of that in. We're going to get rid of scale sprite size by speed, because we don't need it. Velocity by cone is going to go, spawn burst instantaneous is going to go, and then we're going to add in on emitter update a spawn rate. Now, for the spawn rate, I originally set these up to work in full speed, but then I've changed the values in here for different playback speeds. So I'm imagining things going 20 times slower during bullet time. So spawn rate, we're going to click the little link, excuse me, and we're going to say divide float, and A is going to be our base spawn rate, so 32, and B is going to be how much slower we're going. Well, we're going 20 times slower, so we'll put that in, and now you're going to see we get like a really slow spawn rate. We're not going to get barely any. We're only going to get maybe one per loop because it's going to take ages. That's perfectly fine though. We don't mind that. The next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to set up the movement. So you can see here we get this lens. We'll just put it in the right position. On particle spawn, press plus, and we're going to say add velocity. And we just want a really low number, so we're going to put 1 in the X. No, we're going to go -1. We need it to move the other way. So it's moving away from the bullet with the dome towards where the back of the bullet would be. There we are. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to just make sure that these things are living for long enough. So we're going to go into particle spawn. Our lifetime mode is set to random. We're actually going to set this to a direct set, and then we're going to randomize it. I know what you're thinking. Dean's mad. No, he's not. He's got a reason. The reason I'm doing it like this is because I want to be able to control things differently. So here, I'm going to do a multiply float. In the A value, I'm going to link this to a random range float. And this is going to be a value of 5 to 6 seconds. It's currently multiplied by 1, so that's 5 to 6 seconds. But we're going to slow-mo, so I'm going to multiply that by an extra 3. So now they live 15 to 18 seconds each, which will allow us to get our nice bullet wakes going. Next, we want to be able to set the scale of these. So still under particle spawn, head down to mesh attributes, and under mesh scale, we're going to set this to a uniform. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually make that sort of wobbly spawning. So if you've seen the Matrix bullet wakes, you'll notice that they kind of spawn in almost a sine wave. There's a bulge, and then there's a thin bit, then there's a bulge, then there's a thin bit. We can't directly use a sine wave for this, because a sine wave will go into -1 values and will give us some really low results, and it will give us a small time with a bulge and then a long amount of thin, because it's going down to 1, then down to 0, then down to -1, and even if we clamp it, every number below the clamp is going to stay at that clamped value until it goes back up again, so we'd end up with a dip that is far too long. So we're going to manually build our curve. Under the mesh uniform scale, we're going to just change this to a multiply float. And then what we're going to do is our A, we're just going to say 0.5 to make these smaller by default. And then the B is actually going to be a curve. So we're multiplying 0.5 by a curve. And what we'll see here is nothing changes. Let's change our curve. So we've got a value of 1 at 0, add a key to the curve. Set this times 0.5 and the value to 0.5. And then the final key that's at 1, we're going to change that back up to 1 again. We're just going to zoom out, grab all of these and press 1 on the keyboard, and that will change this to an auto, and we're going to get this nice little curve here. But you'll notice we're still not getting anything here. So what we'll do, select the whole emitter and loop behavior. We don't want it to happen once. We want it to happen an infinite amount of times so we can get multiple lenses. You can see here now we're getting some lenses. Yay. And the loop duration, we're going to set this to 5. So we get more lenses. Now, you'll notice they're all exactly the same size. And the reason that they're all exactly the same size, if we go back to our initialized particle, is because the curve index is normalized age. Now, this is happening on spawn, so it's happening at 0. And then all of this depends on the age of the particle. But this only happens at that individual particle spawn. So we need to change the curve index to ignore the particle and instead look for the emitter normalized loop age. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the loop age, in this case 0 to 5 seconds, and it's going to normalize it. So it's going to change it to a 0 to 1 value, which is exactly what we need for our curve. We'll press OK. And now you can see it spawns a big one, then it spawns down to small ones, back up to big ones, back down to small ones, and now we're getting that nice wave. Nice. Now they're also still way too big, so we're just going to be cheeky and we're just going to head to particle update, and we're going to say, I forget what it's called, scale, mesh, size. We're going to change this value. We'll just change them all to 0.1. And now we'll get much smaller lenses, but you can see here, big ones down to small ones, up to big ones, and this is giving us that nice wobbly effect, which is pretty cool. Now we'll add in our colors. So on particle update, color, and we're going to click the little link and we're going to change this to a curve, or color from curve rather. And now we're going to double click the top white box on the left, and we're going to use this lovely green. This is, according to Google, officially matrix green. To get the exact value in the hex sRGB, you can type in 03A062FF, and that will give you this green. We'll press OK, and in the top right white box, we're going to change this to black, like so, because we don't want it to change to any color. We want it to change to no color at all. Then what we'll do is under the scale alpha, we're going to just add this curve into the scale alpha, like so. And for the alpha, what we want to do at 0 is we want a value of 0. We don't want it to be visible at all. We don't want any color. Add a key to the curve. At 0.1, we're going to go up to 1, and then just let it fade back down to 0. Okay, cool. Now, if we were to compile this and press save and look at this in the world, you can see we're getting our lenses, but they're popping in and they're popping out, which obviously we don't want. We don't want them to pop in and we don't want them to pop out. Luckily, we already set up for this eventuality. We knew it was coming. Under particle update, press the plus, dynamic material parameters. We have our refraction, we have our normal strength. Now they're both defaulted to 0 when you put this in, so our lenses are invisible. Woo! That's good because it means that this stuff is working. We can no longer see it, but we actually want them to fade in. So under the refraction, click the link, and then we're going to set up a curve. Now we want to start these not visible, so value of 0. When they fade in, so at 0.1, we want a value of 1. And then we'll let them fade out to 0 again. So they'll fade in, and then they will fade out. For normal strength, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to curve. But with the normal strength, we're actually going to start them at 1. And then at 0.1, we want it to be down at 0.5, and then fade out to 0. So we get a really intense normal, then it fades quite rapidly, and then it fades the rest of the way quite slowly. That is the blobby bits done. So the lenses are done, they're ready. Let's right click the emitter, rename it lens. There we go, so now we know these are lenses, compile and save. Next is our lovely, lovely bullet. We want to put the bullet at the front of this. So, save the material real quick. Right click, material, m_bullets. We're going to open this up, and we're going to drag it over. There he is. Okay, now we're going to want the scratches material, so drag scratches texture, so drag that into the material. And what we're going to do here is we're going to plug our normal into the normal pin. And then we want to be able to make this look metallic. So if we look at the metallic here, we can see how metallic-like the surface looks. We're going to put this value in. So we want it to be metallic. We're going to say roughness of 0.2, so we want it to be quite shiny. You can see we're not getting anything because we don't have any color in here, so we're just going to take a 3 vector, plug a color in, and we're going to pick something suitably bullety. So we just want to try and find ourselves a sort of grayish, not grayish, kind of like goldish, bronzy color. There we are. So if you want to get the same color, here it is. The sRGB value is 88673700. Okay, and that's our bullet material. Nice and easy. Apply and save. Close that down. We'll open up bullet wakes, and now we can open a new emitter. So right click. The engine has decided it doesn't like me. This is the curse of Unreal Engine 5. Okay, there we go. It came back to life. So right click the empty space, add emitter. We'll do a directional burst again. Why not? We'll right click it, rename it to bullet. Always name your emitters, it's important. Take the sprite renderer, delete it, add a renderer, mesh renderer. Select the mesh renderer, override materials, add a mesh, add a material. The mesh is going to be our bullet. So let's grab our bullet mesh, sm_bullet, drop that in, and bullets in here. So there we are. Now, obviously, we don't want to scale sprite. We don't want to scale the color. We don't want drag. We don't want gravity. We don't want velocity in a cone. We don't want to spawn burst. Actually, we do want to spawn burst instantaneous. Bring that back. Spawn burst instantaneous. We just want one. Just one. Then with this bullet emitter selected, loop behavior just once. Loop duration is a fixed. Yeah, fixed. The loop duration itself doesn't matter. Instead, what we're going to do is under particle state, we're going to turn off kills particle when lifetime's ended. That's basically going to mean that this particle lives forever. There he is in all of his glory. He's just going to live. Woo! Now, you can see he's quite big compared to our lovely little lenses here. So we just want to make sure that we get our scale the right size. So under initialize particle, yeah, uniform scale mesh mode 0.025 should give us the right size. There we are. So now we have this nice bullet right at the beginning. We also have to get this spinning. So to do so, under particle update, we just want a update mesh orientation. And we want to make sure that we're spinning this on the right axis. So let's see. Rotation rate, we'll leave it 1. Rotation vector y1. It's not that direction, it's going to be x. So we'll add 1 in the x, and now you can see our bullet is spinning. And we're just adding that in there to add, give this motion. We don't want it to be too quick because, as we say, this is going in slow motion. This is bullet time. So that is probably cool. We're going to press save. The last thing that we need is to add the air distortion at the front of the bullet. And to do that, we're going to bring ourselves up another material. Now, I'm just going to quickly open up the old example. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is quite a long tutorial and my brain ain't what it used to be. So we're going to right click material M underscore. We'll call this air distort. I missed out a T. There we are. We'll open this guy up and drag him to the correct screen. There we are. And now for this guy, what we're going to need is our T flare and our water normal. So we're going to bring those in. And then we're just going to set up some nice UV distortion using our normals. Okay, so we want it to radiate outwards, same as before. So vector to radial value. Now you can cheat here. You can just copy this across from the previous material. We'll grab a panner, plug that into the UVs. We'll just make sure that the values are the same. So on this panner, we're going to have a negative 0.7 and a 0.1 in the X. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to use this to distort the UVs of the flare. To do so, we just need the two values that represent a change in angle, which is the R and the G. So we're going to component mask R and G. And then to actually distort this, we need to take a UV texture. So hold U and left click for a texture coordinate, and A and left click for an add. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the texture coordinate and add the values of the R and the G to the texture coordinate to disrupt the UVs of our texture sample. However, if we just plug this in straight away, it's going to be way too harsh. So if we plug this in and then we go ahead and enable preview, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to start previewing node. You can see that that's way too harsh. That is ridiculously harsh. So before we add, we want to multiply the R and the G by a slightly lower value. We'll put it to 0.6, like so. And now we've got a less harsh distortion. Now, what we don't want, obviously, is we don't want this to go right to the edge of our mesh. We want this to stop before the edge of our mesh so we don't get any really harsh cutoff lines. To do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use a radial gradient exponential, which just draws us a little circle. If we multiply our texture sample, we'll just use the red value, by the radial gradient exponential, and we start previewing this, you can see now that the edges have faded, but you can still see that there's quite a hard edge. So basically, we're going to take the UVs and plug that into the radial gradient as well, and that's going to change our mask to also be distorted. So as the mask moves around, it's going to change where the distortion ends for our wibbly guys. Finally, we're just going to change this to a translucent unlit material, and we're going to grab ourselves a particle color into the emissive color. Get in there, please. There we are. We're going to hold M and left click for a multiply our alpha by the alpha, plug that into the opacity. There we are. And we actually do just want a little bit of refraction in here. So we're going to hold L and left click for a lerp, plug that into the refraction. The radial gradient exponential is going to be the alpha, and the values are going to be 1, which is no refraction, and then something really, 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 really low. So 1.01. There we go. Just a tiny amount of refraction in there. We'll apply, we'll save, we'll close this down. Then we're going to reopen our bullet wakes. There we are. Now what we're going to do is we can take our bullet and we can duplicate him. And we duplicate him a second time. Under the mesh renderer, we want to change bullet to SM cap. And we want to change the material to our M_air distort. And we want to do that for both of them. So we'll grab this one also. There we go. And plug that. And the mesh. There we are. And now you can see we've got the caps on the end. Now these are looking a little bit funky, as you can see here. Not quite looking the way that we want them to. We just need to change some values. So the first one we'll do is this guy here. We're just going to highlight him on his own for a moment so that we can see it. Now, the spawn burst is all fine. We just want one of these to last the entire time. However, what we want to do is we just want to make sure under our initialized particle that it's ever so slightly bigger than the bullet so that it doesn't intersect. So we 0.026 instead. And then we just want to be able to change our color. So add color. And the only thing that we're going to be changing here really is the alpha. So we open the drop down link and we want a curve. What do I want a curve? I don't believe we do. It's not changing over life. So we're just going to put in a flat value of something low. So 0.05. That should be that one looking all fine and funky. There you go. You can just about see it. And if we were to unisolate this, and we'll turn off the second one for now so we don't have visual noise. Now we're just getting this nice little extra piece of like distortion around the edge of the bullet. So we'll do the second one now. The second one is quite a fair amount larger. So what we're going to do is inside of the initialized particle, we don't want to change all of the axes. So in the mesh uniform, we're going to change this to a non-uniform. In the X, we want to 0.026, so the same as the previous, but this one 0.036 in the Y, 0.036 in the Z, and that's going to spread it in 2 dimensions and not the third. And finally, for this one, color, and we're just going to set the alpha also to 0.05. Now, one other thing that we want to do is we just want to make sure that these are moving in a different direction. So we're just going to slow this one down, so 0.5, and the second one, I believe we're just going to spin it entirely backwards. Yes, we are. We're going to take this one and -0.5 to spin it in the opposite way. We're going to compile. We're going to be good VFX artists, and we're going to change these to Air 1 and Air 2. There we go. Good practice. Always do it. And there we have it. There we have our lovely Matrix bullet wake. Woo! I hope that was fun. I hope that was helpful. If you did find it helpful and if you've enjoyed yourself, then please do like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. You have no idea. It helps so much, and it's free. Just please, it's free. If you'd rather just download these files already made, they're available on my Patreon, so you can go check that out. That's it. Thank you very, very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.